Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today, we are doing chapter 107 of Breaking Step. 3 blocks later, there was another attack. 4 guards this time, and Tibs dealt with them easily. They ignored Serba and her dogs, even if she stayed at the edge of the fight, looking unsure what she should do. Did them not consider a threat? Did they even see regular people? It could be their essence was too thin for them to notice. Unlike the previous time, there was where she only noticed the coin the golem had left behind after crumbling away as they were heading away from the as they were leaving the fight. Now, okay, they were leaving. Unlike the previous time where she only noticed the coins the golems left behind after crumbling as they were leaving the fight, this time she gathered them as soon as the fight. Unless the previous time, like the previous time, this time. Now she gathered them as soon as the fighting was done. Then it was 5 blocks until Tibs stopped, sensing them approach from the alleys. There were a lot of them, and he hoped he was right about this. This is up to you, he told Serbo as the first dog stepped out from between 2 houses. It was more massive than Crusher, with a mottled gray and brown coat. What do you mean up to me? She demanded as another followed it. Just one of those things is going to rip my dogs apart. And again, I don't know how I make that switch about when I mean apart. This one was smaller, with pure white curly fur. Then there was a third and more behind them, becoming visible from the alleys, blocking all escapes. I don't want you to fight them. I want you to order them to stop. Maybe get them to fight for you. I can't do that. Tibs, do you have any idea how long it takes to train a dog? And I doubt those things are... They're your dogs, Serba. He formed a nice armor. He'd heard how they'd bitten through Lawrence's arm, and he'd seen them snap wood posts without effort. I'm pretty sure I know if I trained something like Serba. You need to trust me. He suffused himself with earth for the added strength and protection. I'll explain once we're no longer in danger from them. Tibs, I just can't. Now, Serba! He stepped before the massive dog as it jumped and punched it. By the abyss! She muttered as the dog that followed it closed its teeth on Tibbs's arm, cracking the ice armor. No wonder you hang out with my brother. You're just as crazy. He shook his arm, and when the dog flew into the air, it was because the ice had broken away. He filled the gaps, and took a breath to both tell Serba to stop wasting time and ready himself for the mass approaching. She let out a shrill whistle that went up and down and burst. The dog stopped advancing, head snapping up, ears forwards. How? She asked, confused. No! The dam snapped. Attack! Dogs shook themselves and resumed growling. Tell them to stop, Tibbs told her. I don't know if I... Serba, please just do it, he said, trying to swallow the worry. The them is trying to force them to attack and coming here... and dealing with... Them is trying to force them to attack. Okay. The them is it is a run-on sentence, and I'm okay with that in this circumstance. I just want to make sure it makes sense. The them is trying to force them to attack, and coming here or dealing with your dogs was never part of my plan for today, so I don't have jerky on me. You can bribe them with jerky too? She asked, offended. 3 dogs ran at them. Sit! She snapped, then looked at Tib. What is it? I said sit! She yelled as one took another step after looking at the two who had stopped, seeming confused. It and every dog in the street sat. No! The dame yelled in exasperation. I told you to attack them. Tibbs readied himself for the dogs to break from Serbo's order, but they all had their gaze locked on her as she looked around at them. How is this possible? Tibbs didn't take his eyes off the dogs as he spoke, waiting for them to force one to obey. Stowe needs to start with something he's encountered. It was rat and bunnies at first on the first floor because they were things that had wandered inside when he was getting the floor ready. I think that was before the guild found him. Once he has one, he can try things with it. It's how he made the ratlings and buddinglings. The them had yet to give an order. Tibbs could hear or simply controlled one of them. Maybe he couldn't do that. He allowed himself to relax slightly. As he grew, his influence stretched out. It let him make larger floor, but it also reaches more than halfway toward the town. Well, more than that, really, since Craggle grown so much. He shook his head. That wasn't important. That wasn't important. Are you telling me the dungeon can have monsters just appear among people there? Maybe it was to her. No, living things keep him from controlling what's around them. And he wouldn't do that. Unlike what someone thinks, he glared at the ceiling, Stowe's is a good dungeon. He only makes creatures within his wall to test us, the runners. But he can listen and watch the way dungeon do it, anywhere his influence reaches. He likes watching people when he isn't busy. When he sensed your dogs, he made a copy of one, then played with how it looked until he motioned to the variety of dogs sitting around them, all watching her. That the them didn't respond couldn't bode well. She continued to look around, the implication seeming to take time to sink in. So they're all my dogs, she whispered, then looked at him, all replaced with annoyance. That's why you can also bribe only when I have jerky. That did not appease her. She whistled a different sequence, and, as one, the dogs laid down. The them didn't say anything. Tibbs wasn't sure if they were even here anymore. Hopefully, she'd be able to use them in the coming fights because Tibbs didn't think that them going elsewhere meant they were done trying to kill the two of them. Can you get them to follow us? She whistled, and they stood. A different sequence, and they approached. Tibbs stayed on his guard, but they ignored him or her. The only animal behaving the way Tibbs expected were the dogs that had come in with them, moving among the new arrivals and sniffing them as the dog golem took position. Serba took a step forward, and the mass of dogs moved with her. She grinned. You have no idea what I'd give to keep them. When this is over, Stowe might be able to make you some they'll be able to leave with us. Serba knelt where the dog had crumbled away, leaving a silver coin behind. It was the first casualty of a fight. It had taken 4 until the guards they encountered had one sneaky enough to surprise them by splitting this dog into 2 using void. Tibbs only knew the element it had by what it had done, forming a doorway in the middle of the dog and closing it. The other dogs had torn it apart before Tibbs had gotten over the surprise. What happens to them? She asked, standing. I don't know. He thought back to what Stowe had told them. They're made of essence, so Stowe can remake them. He has templates. But I don't know if it means they'll be like this one or just look like it. He looked at her dogs. They stayed closer to her than the dungeon made one. Something like this is going to happen to those who die here. Stowe absorbs everything that's left behind and makes use of it. It's how he grows. Is it going to be a problem, them dying? I'm not going to break down, she stated. It's why I trained them to do the brunt of the fighting. She started walking. How much further? Tibbs looked at the coin she left behind, then joined her. A lot. Stowe's in the city hall, and that's almost to the other side of the city. But it's closer. Come back here. But it's closer than the king's house, I think. We haven't found that yet. So you know where you have to go, and it's just about surviving the monsters while you get there? We have to figure out where to go. And there are puzzles and traps. A lot of the buildings have them. I think those are the important ones. The ones where Ganny put the clues that will lead the teams to the king's house. She likes working with puzzles. Who is this Ganny? She helps Stowe, guides him, tries to keep him from breaking the rules. So there's a woman keeping the place in order, she asked, smirking. I don't think she's a woman. I don't know what she is. She isn't a person the way we are, just like Stowe is a person in a different way than us. But she sounds like a girl to me, and Stowe sounds like a guy. They don't care if you call them it. And the dungeon's a boy. Her tone sounded like learning that made something fall into place. Stowe isn't like anything we understand, Tib said. He's all of this. When we break a wall, he feels it. So someone could come in and kill. Tibbs raised a hand as he sensed something at the limit of his range. He focused through the miasma to work out why they didn't feel like Golem. Then he ran as he made out the tint to their essence. Runners! He yelled as a reply to Serba's call, 4 of them, one of which was losing essence fast. He reached in his pouch and cursed. He'd left the potions with his armor since they weren't scheduled for a run today. It's Tibbs! He yelled when he thought he was close enough to be heard. He still had to stop to keep from colliding with the etching that was then the etching that formed into a wall of ice, a wall of swords. What are you doing here? Quigley demanded, glaring. It's our run. She needs help? He replied, reaching into his pouch. How come she didn't drink a potion? Took all we had for the 4 of us to get out of that palace alive, the archer said. Then the abyss curse place went wild. If they didn't have one, how was he going to pull this off? Or did it matter anymore if they knew he had more than one element? His finger closed on something that wasn't a coin, and he pulled it out. This will help. He showed the small crystal and worked at not showing his puzzlement. He had no memory of putting that in there, and it had been a long time since his fingers had found pockets without him noticing. Or maybe it was just that he'd stopped noticing if the coins in his pouch at the end of the day didn't match what they should be. It wasn't like he looked in it all that often. It's like the dungeon's gone feral again, Quigley said. The wall disappeared into essence. It's not that. He put the crystal in Jen's hand. It's being attacked. He made a splint over her body to keep her essence from leaking, then made a weave of purity. Not again, the sorceress said, her words barely audible through her exhaustion as the mass of essence rounded the corner. They're with me, she said as they got ready for a fight. Well, with her, but she's with me. A whistle from Serba and the dog came to a stop. Serb? The archer called. Demon, she replied, returning the greeting in a flatter tone than his had been. What is she doing here? Quigley demanded. Tibbs, what the fuck is going on? He motioned to the army of dogs sitting at her feet. It's complicated. No shit. Whenever isn't it when you're involved? I so do not want to know. The warrior had a hand over his face. I have enough problems of my own. I'll explain everything after I've saved the dungeon. Quigley gave Tibbs an indignant look. I'll help. We'll help. No, Quigley stated. Jen tapped out, and unless you lied to me, you barely have anything left. I'm fine, the rogue said, handing the crystal back to Tibbs. That thing's magic strong enough. I can still feel it working. Then you can escort Mort and... You're all leaving, Tibbs said. They were all injured, and without healing potions, they wouldn't hold this and pass it to the other, he told the archer. Tibbs, you can't do this alone, Quigley said. As soon as Mort took it, Tibbs applied a weave of purity. Hopefully, there would be enough left to help through the other fights. I saved him once without help, he replied, and I have it now. Biss, what is this thing? The archer asked, peering at the crystal. Just something I found. The sorcerer snatched it out of Mort's hand. I don't feel any. Her eyes went wide as Tib applied the weave to her. Does she even have an element? No. He motioned for her to hand it back, and when she hesitated, he took it and offered it to Quigley. Then how much help can she be? He winced, reached for it. As he winced, reaching for it, and looked over his shoulder. Sorry, I didn't mean to. My feelings are fine, Serbo replied, but I'll be happy to demonstrate what I'm capable of if you really need me to, metal man. That won't be necessary. Quigley's eyes widened as Tibs applied the weave. He shook himself. But you can use more help, Tibs. No, this wasn't about the help he might or might not need. Tibs, you have to go back to Cross. The warrior stared at him in disbelief. Are you fucking kidding me? That woman wants to rip my He glared at Serba. Balls is the word you're looking for, she said, and my understanding is you deserve it. Of course she told you, Quigley grumbled. She's going to be pissed at me if it's my fault you die and she doesn't get to punish you so you can make it up to her. I've seen her angry, and I don't want her angry at me. She isn't going. You two are going to scream at one another, then you're going to talk about it, then you're going to make up and have you time with her. Trust me, I've seen Jackal and Krosav go through that often enough. Quigley shook his head in amusement, then sobered. Tibs, I'm not going to tell Jackal I left you to die. I left you here to die. Then don't tell him you saw me. Tibs, why are you looking to die? I'm not, but he can take care of himself, Serba said, annoyed. He took on half a dozen guards at one point, did that magic stuff you all do, and won. He motioned to the dog. And now he has our help. Take your team out. Take your team out, Tibs told the warrior. It's not going to get any easier getting to the stairs. Tibs, Quigley said in exasperation, I'm going to be fine. I know what I'm doing. Mostly. This was no different than from a run. There was always stuff to work out on the way to the boss room. If you don't walk out of this dungeon, Tibs, Jackal's going to beat you to it, Tibs said. The warrior let out a slow breath. All right, you heard him. We're heading out. Stay on your guard. He gave Tibs a glare, then walked away. You and Demon? Tibs asked once they were out of sight. He's just a guy I know. No wonder the dungeon takes it easy on your kind, the dame said in disgust as Tibs was about to ask her how many guys she let get away with calling her Serb. Still doesn't take it easy on us, Tibs replied. We've all lost too many friends in here. And you are going to lose more, they taunted. Once you are dead, I will ensure that things that exist outside this pitiful dungeon suffer despite the protection they received. How about you come here and stop me right now, then? Tibs called back. Come on, I'm right here. Not brave enough to take on someone as straight as me? The only answer was a retreating chuckle. Tibs resumed walking. Is goading whatever you're talking to a good idea? She asked, stepping next to him, and the dog surrounded them. People say things they don't mean to when they get angry. Only that's not people, right? They still make mistakes. What mistakes has it made at this point? Tibs smiled. Tibs smiled at her. It's ignoring you. And that concludes chapter 107 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, as well as the other books in the series, they are up for free on Royal Road. If you want to read ahead of that and support me in the process, that is on my Patreon. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.